We charged them with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, kidnapping, and hundreds of related charges.
When 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland went to the hospital back in May, she weighed only 50 pounds and had more than 75 bruises on her body.
The agony of this 12-year-old girl's story is a soul-crushing reminder of the darkest depths of human depravity. Her tiny body, battered and bruised, tells a tale of unimaginable suffering, of torture and abuse that is almost too horrific to comprehend. The 75 bruises that covered her fragile skin, the broken ribs that pierced through her flesh, and the sunken eyes that once sparkled with life, all bear witness to the brutal cruelty she endured at the hands of those who were supposed to love and protect her. It's a miracle that she clung to life as long as she did, despite the unbearable pain and terror that she faced every waking moment. The thought of her tiny heart beating with fear, her small voice crying out for help, and her fragile body trembling with pain is a haunting image that will forever be etched in our minds. The fact that she was forced to endure such unimaginable suffering, alone and unaided, is a stark reminder of the failures of our society, and the evil that lurks in the shadows, waiting to strike. As the truth of her abuse began to unravel, the initial attempt to cover it up with a fabricated story of a bicycle accident seems almost laughable, a pathetic attempt to hide the evil that lurked beneath the surface. But the paramedics and doctors who treated her saw through the facade, their trained eyes and compassionate hearts recognizing the unmistakable signs of prolonged and systematic abuse. The discovery of 450 videos of filmed torture, recorded in real time, and over 100 text messages detailing the abuse, is a chilling insight into the twisted minds of her tormentors, a glimpse into a world of unspeakable evil that is almost too terrifying to contemplate. The stepmother in particular seems to have taken a twisted pleasure in the girl's suffering, reveling in the power and control she wielded over her. A monstrous and depraved individual who deserves only our contempt and revulsion. The fact that she was able to hide her true nature to masquerade as a caring and loving parent is a stark reminder of the dangers of deception and the ease with which evil can hide in plain sight. The thought of her, smiling and laughing while secretly inflicting such horrific abuse on her stepdaughter, is an image that will forever be etched in our minds. A reminder of the evil that lurks within human hearts. As we delve deeper into this tragic story, it's natural to feel a sense of unease, even revulsion. The details are graphic, the abuse is shocking, and the suffering is almost too much to bear. But it's essential to remember that this is not just a story about abuse. It's a story about a human being, a young girl who deserved to be loved, protected, and cherished. Her life was cut short in the most brutal way imaginable, and it's our responsibility to bear witness to her story, to honor her memory, and to ensure that justice is served. So, if you're prepared to confront the darkness that lurks within human hearts, if you're ready to face the evil that can masquerade as love and care, then join me as we explore the most horrific story of child abuse you will ever hear. But be warned, the details are graphic, the emotions are raw, and the truth is devastating. Can you handle the truth? Welcome to Detective Jeffrey Crime Station. A huge thank you to our amazing subscribers and viewers for joining us on this journey into the world of true crime. We're honored that you've chosen to spend your time with us, and we're grateful for your trust and support. If you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell to stay up to date on our latest captivating stories. Your engagement means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more thrilling and thought-provoking content with you. Malinda Hoagland was born on July 4, 2011, a day meant for fireworks and celebration. She should have grown up surrounded by love, laughter, and warmth. Instead, her world became one of pain and silence. She lived in the Poconos with her father, Rendell Hoagland, and his girlfriend, Cindy M. Warren, before the three moved to Chester County, Pennsylvania. Somewhere along the way, the little girl's life became one of control, isolation, and suffering. She had two half-sisters, Emily Lee, 28, and Jamie Hoagland, 23, but she was not allowed to grow up alongside them. The bond that should have been there, one of protection and love, was replaced with separation and secrecy. Her father and Cindy Warren kept her away from the outside world, locking her in a cycle of abuse that no one could see. Malinda had been a child full of life, a girl who found joy in the simplest things. She loved movies, loved to talk, and never shied away from making friends. To her sisters, she had always been a bubbly child, one who looked at the world with wonder and excitement. She had loved life, she had trusted it. But in the end, it had failed her in every possible way. At first, the signs were small, subtle enough that they were easy to miss. Then, by November 2023, Malinda's absence could no longer be ignored. She stopped attending in-person school, disappearing from classrooms, hallways, and playgrounds. School records painted a picture of a child slipping away. 25 unexcused absences, 10 excused, a pattern that should have raised alarms. Her parents claimed she had switched to cyber school, but this was no educational choice. It was a way to hide the horrors happening behind their closed doors. What no one knew at the time was that Malinda was not just missing from school. She was living in a prison of torment and cruelty. Investigators would later uncover the truth. She was shackled to the floor during her virtual classes, her young body restrained as she stared at a screen that projected a lie. She was not free to move, not free to escape, not even free to cry. If her injuries became too obvious, her father and Cindy used makeup to cover the bruises, and when the wounds were too severe to be hidden, when her face was rubbed raw from the carpet, when her body could no longer pass as normal, she was kept home, out of sight, out of reach. Punishment was a constant. She was forced to do endless push-ups until her arms trembled, until her body collapsed under its own weakness. She was made to stand for hours, arms stretched out, heavy books pressing down on her fragile frame. Every mistake, every drop, every moment of exhaustion was met with violence. And they filmed it. It was not enough to hurt her. They wanted proof of her pain. No one knew, no one saw, and no one came to save her. By the time Malinda's life came to an end, she was barely holding on. On the night of May 4, 2024, Rendell Hoagland dialed 911, his voice eerily steady as he told the operator that his daughter had been injured in a bike accident. He claimed she had crashed into a tree while riding outside at 12:30 a.m., painting a picture of a simple, tragic mistake. When paramedics arrived, they found Malinda unconscious, her body grotesquely emaciated, her limbs thin and fragile, her skin marred by bruises, sores, and open wounds. She was rushed to Paoli Hospital's trauma unit, but there was little they could do. Her body had already been destroyed before she ever reached their care. As the doctors examined her, the truth unraveled. The medical staff immediately knew this was no accident. She weighed just 50 pounds, a starvation weight for a 12-year-old girl. Her body was covered in more than 75 individual wounds, each one a silent testimony to her suffering. There were bruises of different colors and stages of healing, proof that her abuse had been ongoing. She had broken bones and internal organ damage, injuries that could not be explained away by a simple fall from a bike. As doctors and nurses fought to keep her alive, her father and Cindy Warren continued to lie. They tried to pass off her injuries as minor. A small cut, a little lump on her forehead, nothing serious. When asked about additional bruising, Cindy Warren claimed Malinda had been hurt on a water slide at a campground, another desperate excuse to explain away the evidence of their crimes. But no lie could cover the reality of what had been done to her. Malinda had lost consciousness long before they ever called 911. She had been suffering for hours while they did nothing. In truth, they had waited nearly an entire day before finally deciding to seek help. By then, it was too late. At 9:57 p.m., Malinda Hoagland died on the operating table. Her cause of death was as horrifying as the life she had been forced to live. She did not die from a bike crash. She did not die from an accident. The autopsy revealed the true cause: starvation and multiple blunt force injuries. She had pressure ulcers, contusions, and bruises covering her tiny frame, signs of prolonged abuse and neglect. She had been reduced to a shell of a child, a girl whose body had been systematically destroyed over time by the very people who should have protected her. Had she lived, Malinda would have turned 13 years old this summer. She should have been outside playing, laughing, celebrating her birthday with cake and presents and the warmth of people who loved her. Instead, she is another child whose name will forever be etched into the long, tragic list of those who suffered in silence. The world failed Malinda. Her school failed her. Her community failed her. The system failed her. She was disappearing before everyone's eyes, and yet no one saw her until it was too late. And now, in the aftermath of her death, the question remains: how many more children are suffering right now, trapped behind doors that no one thinks to open? And how many more will we lose before we decide to listen? Malinda Hoagland was just 12 years old when she died in May 2024, weighing only 50 pounds. A child so emaciated, so battered, that hospital staff could barely believe what they were seeing. But what haunts her family most is not just the abuse she endured, it's the fact that it could have been prevented. Now, her surviving family is fighting back. They have filed a lawsuit claiming that multiple levels of government failed Malinda. They are pointing the finger not just at her father, Rendell Hoagland, and his girlfriend, Cindy M. Warren, but at the institutions that were supposed to protect her, including the Coatesville Area School District, Chester County Children, Youth and Families, and other government agencies. The suit paints a damning picture of neglect, oversight failures, and a system that looked the other way. Authorities have confirmed that Malinda's suffering was captured on surveillance cameras inside her home. Her father and Warren didn't just abuse her, they recorded it. The evidence revealed torture that should never happen to a child. Starved, abused, and completely humiliated, said attorney Tom Bosworth, who represents Malinda's adult half-sisters in the lawsuit. Shackled to furniture, naked, with metal things that should really only be in prisons. The details are unbearable to hear, but they demand to be known. Malinda was forced into submission, bound, beaten, and left in a home where no one cared if she lived or died. And yet there were warning signs, signs that were seen, reported, and ignored. Attorneys Tom Bosworth and Alexandria Cruthamel represent Malinda's estate and her 3 older half-sisters. Bosworth argues that Malinda was not invisible. Her suffering was not hidden in the shadows. People saw, people suspected, and people reported, but no one acted. At North Brandywine Middle School, where Malinda was once enrolled, staff noticed the alarming pattern of absences. They grew concerned. They picked up the phone. They reported their suspicions to Childline, the state's child abuse hotline. But that's where it stopped. Not one time did county officials go visit the home, Bosworth said. Not one time did they interview Malinda. Not one time did they speak with this child. Instead, authorities made a single call. When Hoagland and Warren insisted Malinda was fine, they accepted it without question. And then, she vanished. Shortly after that report, Hoagland withdrew her from school and enrolled her in a cyber charter school, cutting off one of the last lifelines she had. With no teachers to see the bruises, no school nurse to monitor her weight, and no classmates to witness her suffering, Malinda was completely isolated. The school district later released a statement defending itself, saying, "The school had concerns about the child's welfare in the fall and diligently reported those concerns to Children and Youth Services, and shortly thereafter the child was withdrawn and enrolled in a cyber charter school. But her family believes that wasn't enough. Malinda had already been showing clear signs of abuse. She was starving, she was disappearing, and yet no one demanded answers. Perhaps the most shocking revelation is that county officials knew Malinda was living with a convicted child abuser and still did nothing. Cindy M. Warren had a history. In 2009, she was sentenced to 3 to 7 years in prison for endangering the welfare of her own son. She had already been labeled a danger to children. She should have never been allowed to care for Malinda. But the system never intervened. No one checked in, no one removed Malinda from that home. Instead, they left her to suffer at the hands of a woman who had already proven herself capable of harm. Malinda's family is not just suing for justice. They are demanding systemic change. They are calling for a national registry of child abusers, much like Megan's Law, so that no child is placed in the hands of someone with a known history of abuse. What they want out of this is change, said attorney Alexandria Cruthamel. They are not looking for damages. They could care less if it's $1 or $1 billion. What they are looking for is change. They want to ensure that no other child is ignored the way Malinda was, that no other school, no other agency, no other government body shrugs off warning signs and walks away. Malinda Hoagland's name should have never been written in tragedy. She should have been a teenager, growing, learning, and living a full life. Instead, her name is now a rallying cry. A reminder that the system failed one child too many. Her family is making sure that she will not be forgotten. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel as a means of encouraging us. Thank you as you do so. The case against Rendell Hoagland and Cindy Warren has taken a grave turn. The Chester County couple, already facing horrific allegations in the starvation and torture death of 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland, are now charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy, according to court records and the Chester County District Attorney's Office. The charges have multiplied. Hundreds of new counts filed against the pair, each one painting a picture of deliberate cruelty, calculated violence, and a complete absence of humanity. Now, prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. District Attorney Christopherina Sarobe did not mince words when he spoke about Malinda's suffering. She did not have any disease. She was starved and forced to exercise, and did not have an ounce of fat on her. She did not waste away due to illness. She did not collapse because of an accident or misfortune. She was systematically broken, beaten, and erased. When she was finally found, she was barely alive. They communicated regularly on how they would terrorize Malinda, Deborena Sarobe said. These were not just random acts of violence. They were meticulously planned. It was a partnership in cruelty, a shared obsession with power and control. What is perhaps most disturbing is that Malinda herself had been reprogrammed. She had been conditioned to accept the pain, the humiliation, the starvation as normal. She did not resist, she did not cry for help, because she had been taught that no help was coming. The district attorney acknowledged this chilling reality. "I don't think a visit to the house would have shown anything," he said. She had been reprogrammed. Malinda wasn't just a victim of abuse. She was a child erased from the world, forced to exist in a reality where she had no worth, no safety, and no escape. Chester County Children, Youth and Families, CYF, the very agency tasked with protecting children like Malinda, responded with a carefully worded statement. As required by law, CYF has convened a review team, and an official report reflecting the findings will be developed. Due to the confidential nature of child protection cases such as this, we cannot comment further on any aspects of Malinda's case. It was an answer with no answers, a promise of a review when what Malinda needed was rescue. But the failures go deeper than just inaction. Warren should not have been near Malinda in the first place. Court records reveal that a custody order from 2007 placed severe restrictions on Warren's ability to be around Malinda. She had a previous conviction for child endangerment, a clear documented history of abuse, and yet Rendell Hoagland ignored those restrictions. He did not just allow Warren into Malinda's life, he made her a partner in her suffering. When confronted by reporters outside an unrelated court hearing, Warren refused to speak about the charges against her. She had nothing to say for herself, but Malinda's family does. Malinda Hoagland's half-sisters, Emily Lee, 28, and Jamie Hoagland, 23, say they had no idea about the horror their little sister endured in the final months of her life. They never imagined that while they were living their own lives, Malinda was wasting away, suffering alone, in silence. "I was just estranged from my father, waiting for my sister to get older," Emily Lee explains. "We had a relationship before my dad got with Cindy, but I wouldn't say we knew anything was happening. We were just kept in the dark. When Rendell Hoagland started dating Cindy Warren, something about it didn't sit right with Emily. She decided to Google Warren's name, and what she found immediately alarmed her. I asked my dad, 'Hey, do you know what this woman has been accused of? Do you know what she's done?' Emily remembers. And it was just understood that we weren't supposed to talk about it. She wanted to believe that Warren had changed. But when Rendell moved away, cutting off most communication, her concerns for Malinda only grew. For Jamie Hoagland, her last memory of Malinda is something she can't stop replaying in her mind. It was May 2023, and Rendell had moved with Warren to Chester County, more than 2 hours away from where Jamie lived. She had gone to a competition where her father had entered, expecting to see Malinda there. But Malinda never showed up. Jamie's instincts immediately kicked in. Something felt wrong. "I demanded to see her," she said. She tracked them down to a hotel where they were staying. When she arrived, she brought food for all of them. A simple act of care that, looking back, seems unbearably tragic. And that's when she saw her little sister. Malinda was curled up in a hotel room that was 50 degrees. She was wrapped in blankets and sweatshirts, shivering. "I didn't really think anything of it," Jamie admitted, her voice heavy with regret. When Rendell and Warren stepped out of the room, Jamie seized the chance to talk to Malinda alone. She asked how she was, how she liked her new school, if she was making friends. Malinda gave all the right answers. Answers that, in hindsight, feel scripted. And then the door opened. Rendell and Warren walked back in. Their tone was sharp, dismissive. "We're going to bed. You guys need to leave now." Jamie left, unaware that this would be the last time she would ever see Malinda alive. A few months later, Malinda was pulled out of school. From that moment on, her isolation was complete. Her sisters never got another chance to save her. It never got easier to talk about. Jamie Hoagland knew it never would. Not in a month, not in a year, not in a lifetime. But she also knew that silence was dangerous. If they didn't speak, if they let their pain keep them quiet, Malinda's story would fade into the background. It would be swept back under the rug, buried just like the warnings that were ignored, just like Malinda herself. And that couldn't happen. Months had passed since Malinda's death, but Emily and Jamie were still drowning in grief. The weight of it was unbearable, knowing that their sister had suffered so much while they had been kept in the dark. But they refused to let her name fade into just another tragic headline. They were determined to fight for something greater. They were now pushing for something called Malinda's Law, a national registry for physical abusers. Sex offenders had a public database, one that parents, employers, and law enforcement could easily access. But for those who had violently abused children in other ways, there was nothing. Cindy Warren had already been convicted of child endangerment in the past, yet nothing had stopped her from having access to Malinda. That had to change. Their attorney, Alexandria Cruthamel, had already begun taking steps toward making Malinda's Law a reality. She and co-counsel Tom Bosworth had been in contact with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, hoping to push for legislation in Malinda's name. If they succeeded, her death would not be in vain. For Jamie and Emily, the pain of losing Malinda would never go away. But if they could make sure no other child suffered the way she had, if they could create real, lasting change, then Malinda's story wouldn't just be one of tragedy, it would be a call to action, a reason to finally fix a system that had failed her so terribly. Emily, Jamie, and Abby Hoagland were still grappling with the immense weight of losing Malinda in such a horrific way. There was no handbook, no guide to tell them how to navigate the murder of a child, a sister, a granddaughter, a niece, a cousin. Their family was grieving, questioning, and trying to find solace in one another. The loss was unbearable, but they refused to let it break them. They placed their faith in the justice system, hoping that those responsible for Malinda's suffering and death would be held accountable and punished to the fullest extent of the law. They cooperated fully with law enforcement, determined to see justice served. But beyond seeking justice, they wanted the world to remember Malinda. Not for the pain she endured, but for the beautiful, sweet girl she had been. We wish to place our focus on the beautiful, sweet girl Malinda, who we all loved and continue to love very much, they had said. They wanted the community to be vigilant, to understand that the signs of abuse could not be ignored. They urged people to use the National Abuse Hotline or Pennsylvania's Child Line to report any suspected abuse, reminding everyone that reports were anonymous and could save a life. And in an emergency, they emphasized, people must call 911. Their mission now was clear. As we seek justice for Malinda, our goal is to focus on the future and work with law enforcement agencies and legislators to ensure that repeat offenders can never hurt another child. Malinda's life and death will not be in vain. Evil never has the last word. The outpouring of support from the community had been overwhelming, and they were deeply grateful. But they needed that support to continue, to grow into something meaningful and lasting. We appreciate the support from the community, and we ask that you join us on our Facebook page, Justice for Malinda, and use Justice for Malinda to receive updates, to learn about the amazing girl Malinda was, and to help us be agents of change. Thank you. As they mourned, they also fought. Malinda had been silenced in life, but in death, her story would not be ignored. We hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new. Because you did, subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to show your appreciation. Additionally, tap the notification bell to be kept abreast with our latest videos and ensure you don't miss out on any new content. This will keep you informed about our upcoming true crime stories and allow you to stay engaged with our community. Thank you once again. Your support means a lot to us.